Yes, people, yes, people, yes, people. Welcome back to the We Talk Football podcast. Been about since Fubu and Kappa. If you know, you know. How you doing, Quakes?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good, thank you. It's been a long couple of days with work and whatnot, so I'm looking forward to going home and sleeping.
Really, you look tired, bruv.
I'm tired as fuck, man. I'm tired as fuck. The view ain't too bad. So. Yeah, how you doing anyway? You good?
I'm good, man. Yeah, it's been a quiet couple of days. Just living life. We had the announcements of obviously from Boris. So things are
Yeah,
looking like they might get back to normal in the next
yeah,
6 months or so. So we can hope, we can pray, we can keep our fingers crossed.
yeah,
And live life accordingly. But there's been some big news in the world of football today. Obviously, Celtic have parted ways with Neil Lennon after he resigned this morning, and we thought it'd be a good conversation topic to talk about the potential of Lampard going to Celtic. We know he's not the bookie's favourite. We know it's probably not going to happen. But there's a romance surrounding it. You know, it's not as, Eddie Howe isn't, versus Gerrard isn't as romantic as Lampard versus Gerrard. But what do
yeah.
you think about it, Quakes?
Yeah, I would obviously love to see it. Everyone would love to see Gerrard and Lampard rekindle their pseudo rivalry. I don't really think that the rivalry exists between those two, but the media love to build it up. So to see Lampard at the hoops and Gerrard at Ibrox, it'd be interesting to see. Like you say, it's probably not going to happen. There are other favourites for the job, but it might be a job that comes a bit too soon for Frank Lampard. I think he might need to have a little time out, kind of rejig and rethink his tactics and coaching methods, and then go again at the beginning of the season, as opposed to taking over a job midway through a season where there's a lot of pressure on it already.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Lampard has left little to the desires as being a football manager anyway. I know he's had a good season at Derby and I know he's had a good season at Chelsea. But yeah, is he ready? Celtic's a big job, whether you like it or not. And this season, they were expecting 10 trophies in a row. Obviously, it hasn't gone that way. There's going to be big expectations on him again. And it's the kind of club, like when we had the episode with Dan a few weeks ago, I was saying that he hasn't really been afforded much time at a club where he can afford to make mistakes, and if he goes to Celtic, although you can argue it's probably not the standard of the Premier League, it's still going to be a club that's expected to win trophies, expected to compete. So it'd be, you can argue whether it's too early in his managerial career, and obviously the bookies are reflecting that anyway. But I suppose that's
Yeah,
enough from Frank Lampard.
yeah. One thing I will jump on is obviously you said about the kind of romance of rekindling like a rivalry. Rafa, I know he's not in the top 10, but the thought of Rafa managing Celtic while Gerrard's at Rangers would also be another interesting one for the pundits to kind of mull over. Just because I don't know if Celtic could afford him, but if I was Celtic and I was looking for a man to rebuild my club, somebody who's done that before, someone who even went down to the Championship with Newcastle to rebuild them back to a Premier League entity that they are today. If I was Celtic, I would be looking to bring in someone like Rafa Benitez.
Would Rafa Benitez want to go there though? I feel like
Rafa Benitez managed Newcastle in the Championship. Like, I know Newcastle are Newcastle a bigger club than Celtic? No, not in terms of trophies won, not in terms of even like
I, prob-
anything.
I probably don't put enough respect on Celtic's name just because
Mm,
I don't look at the Scottish League as as a big league. I just don't
yeah,
see that,
yeah, 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 yeah.
But then you look at people like Brendan Rodgers, for example. Brendan Rodgers had what happened at Liverpool, got sacked at Liverpool, but then went to Celtic. He's
Mm.
obviously then grew as a manager even further, and now he's come back to the Premier League, and he looks great. He
Well,
looks like
yeah.
he looks so. I suppose it could go either way. I think, as I
Mm.
said though, I don't necessarily. Maybe I need to give the Scottish League a little bit more respect than what I do.
Nah, nah. To be fair, I feel you. When the league's got 12 teams in there, that's Sunday league. That's a scream Sunday league. So like, I feel you in terms of like the Scottish league not being people not taking it as serious as it is. Obviously, Rangers and Celtic are a huge club. So is Dundee and so is Aberdeen. But it's not. It's nothing in comparison to like the Premier League.
But even so, like saying Celtic are a bigger club than Newcastle,
Mm.
um,
It's a tough one.
you can probably argue that they are, but Newcastle, like football's a religion in Newcastle,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
like you can argue that Newcastle play at a higher level. I look at the quality that like Celtic have as a football club in terms of the football players. You only
Mm.
look at the players that have really excelled there in recent years. a lot of them are players that didn't excel in the Premier League or were in the Championship. And, you know, I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything like that, but Scott Sinclair was a promising youngster, didn't really do enough in the Premier League, went to Celtic and was a success there. I think that kind of determines the level that they're at. And I don't mean that in any disrespect, because, you know, they're always punching above their weight in Europe and things like that. And, you know, Rangers this year are doing really well in the Europa League, for example. But I don't know. It's just it's an obstacle I struggle to get over. I think it draws down to you get people saying things like, oh, if they come into if they join the, you know, the English football system, they would dominate football and things like that. Like I sometimes I struggle with that.
If Celtic come to the Premier League, they're in the relegation scrap for sure. Like
genuinely, I think they're a Championship club with one of the best like support networks in terms of fans and things like that in the country. You know, let's be honest. You know, like they're a huge football club, but, you know, they're also a big fish in a little pond.
Yeah, they're hampered as a result of the level of the league. I think if Celtic were, in terms of the size of club, say they were in the Premier League, they'd be able to attract better players or whatnot. But because their opposition that people come up against week in, week out aren't of a level, they don't need to be, or they haven't needed to be until Rangers will come back to prominence, of a top level to win the Scottish League. So I think you just fall into like being comfortable. And it's reflected in their performances in Europe. They came bottom of the Europa League group this year. And that whole chase for like number 10, title number 10, has kind of like, I don't know, it's fallen in on itself. And the trip to Dubai in the winter, it's kind of been a disastrous season. And by the end of it, Neil Lennon looked like a broken man. So it's a rebuilding job for whoever does take on that job at Celtic. I would like to see it be Frank Lampard, but like you said, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I'd love it to be Frank Lampard, so there's a romance. But if I'm honest, I would love to see Eddie Howe there. I think Eddie Howe could really thrive there, because I feel like he had a period at Bournemouth where he was touted as, you know, the next big manager, and then because it ended a little more sourly with their relegation than what a lot of people would have hoped for, it's almost tarnished his reputation somewhat. And I would like to see him go back to Celtic, you know, rebuild some of that reputation that he's, you know, rightly has, and then, you know, in a few years' time, come back to the Premier League and he'll be a better manager as a result. You know, I'd love to see if someone like that. There's Steve Clarke and people like that are being thrown in, but I've seen Steve Clarke have plenty of jobs over the years. I'd love to see a young manager like Lampard or Eddie Howe, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's enough on Celtic and Scottish football. I suppose we should talk a little bit about Chelsea last night, Quakes. It's a great result for you guys. Yeah,
absolutely buzzing. I was watching it at work, and there was quite a few Chelsea fans in, and we went mental when Giroud scored the goal. Then obviously it looked offside clearly when he scored it, and then went to VAR. And the longer it took, the more we thought like this is going to be given as a goal. And then you see it comes off a Atletico Madrid player, and everyone goes mad again. Incredible result from Chelsea. I think Atletico Madrid did not look very good. No. They made us look good. They didn't kind of attack until they were down. We controlled possession. We kind of controlled the game. It was a bit of a bitty game, a lot of fouls in there, but I'm buzzing with the result, man, because they're top of La Liga. I think it might be a reflection of how bad La Liga is right now, but we beat a team that's top of La Liga, and it's kind of Tuchel's first big win as Chelsea manager. So I'm buzzing. What do you think of that?
For sure. Atletico's performance was very synonymous with the kind of football you would associate with Diego Simeone, really. And like you say, I heard Rio say it on BT Sport last night when, you know, it could be a reflection on the quality of La Liga at the moment, because I think I'm not sure. Well, I know it's the latter stages of the game where Atletico hadn't actually registered a shot on target or something like that. So they didn't really offer enough offensively in the game and played their, traditional defensive way. But it was a moment of, sheer pragmatism from Olivier Giroud when he pulled off that overhead kick. And again, you can argue VAR again somewhat detracting from the moment, because that's a moment of brilliance and should be celebrated straight away. But there was a delay of 3-4 minutes again, so it's the same old debate.
With that, I love the way that VAR has been implemented in the Champions League. Like in England, the problem is, and the reason why there's so much debate around it, is that they show you about 50 different replays. And by that time, you've made up your mind. You're like, oh, yeah, I was rubbish. So they show you 50 replays whilst also taking 3 minutes. With the Champions League, it's like, they're not going to show you it. So you accept the decision regardless. Like, they're not going to show you continuous replays. It's like you accept their decision. I know the Champions League has got the best officials and the best referees in the world, but the way they handle it is way more efficient, and you're way more inclined to take what they say as gospel, as opposed to the Premier League, where every Tom, Dick, and Harry's got an opinion on a decision being made, even though VAR was supposed to be brought in to kind of eliminate that grey area. So I kind of love the way that VAR was kind of used in Europe and has been used in Europe this season.
Okay, that's a fair point. Moving on to Giroud, of course. When is Giroud going to get the respect he deserves?
I feel like with Chelsea fans, like, we've been loving Giroud. Like, we've been loving him. I think where it kind of changed for us is our run to win the Europa League a couple of years ago, where he top scored in the Europa League, and he scored in the final against Arsenal, and he kind of really established himself as a kind of one of those Chelsea strikers that we relate to, that we recognise. The likes of, I'm not comparing them to these guys, but when you see Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, or you see Didier Drogba, you see Diego Costa, these are strikers that have a physical presence, and those are strikers that I recognise as being successful at Chelsea, as opposed to different strikers that we've tried to, maybe a bit smaller in stature. Giroud really embodies what a Chelsea striker is. So with Chelsea fans, we've been loving him, but in terms of the world, the wider world of football, if they're not respecting him now, then I don't know what it's going to take, because this guy's won the World Cup, this guy's won Europa League, this guy won FA Cups. There's not much more he can do at this stage to kind of gain respect from people who don't respect him.
Yeah, he's very underrated. He's been criminally underrated for a few years, and I feel like it's always been down to the fact that he's so impactful as a sub. He's always been the guy to come off the bench and make an impact. So yeah, I think he's criminally underrated. We were linked with him in the January transfer window at West Ham, and I would take him within a heartbeat. I think he's a serial winner, you know, like on the international level anyway. But he scores goals wherever he goes. Look at France. You know, I know you could probably put a donkey up front for France, and they'd probably score a load of goals. But he's scoring the goals for France. You know, he's won the World Cup, like you say. He scored goals. He scored, you know, just memorable goals for Arsenal, scored goals for Chelsea now. And, you know, it's going to get to a point where, you know, when he retires, he's had a phenomenal career. So
100%. I feel like part of the disrespect for Giroud as well is that during that run where France went and won the World Cup, he didn't score a goal. And so, like, as a striker where you're measured on your goals, that's going to be a kind of blot on your record. But forgetting that he brought so many other players into play. Griezmann was better because of Giroud playing. Mbappe was better because of Giroud playing. He kind of brought everyone into play. But the fact that France got all the way to the World Cup final, he played every game, didn't score a goal. I feel like people kind of look at that and pinpoint that. But if you look at players like Eden Hazard, talk about Olivier Giroud, they're like, he's the best player I've played with because things bounce off of him. I can be the best version of myself when I play with someone like that. So yeah, man, he's been a legend, and he will go down as a Chelsea legend for sure.
So we're in unison on that. We actually agree on something for once.
Yeah, for sure. Giroud is a bad boy.
One other question I want to float your way is Callum Hudson-Odoi had a fairly decent game last night, right? Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How much of that would you put down to Tuchel's treatment of him on the weekend?
So I always knew that Hudson-Odoi was going to start this game. Like, it was.
Yeah,
Tuchel kind of knows how to play the game. He's a very experienced manager, and he knows what buttons to push on what players. And he probably knew that Hudson-Odoi could take it, so he took him off. He's like, I didn't like the way you played there, but you're going to play the next game. So I think Hudson-Odoi had a decent game. I don't think he was unbelievable. I don't think anyone had an amazing game, but he was decent. He's not playing in his preferred position. He's making the most of it. So when we see Hudson-Odoi be moved into his favourite position, we're going to see a more complete player. But yeah, Hudson-Odoi played decent, and I feel like the story of him and Tuchel was much to do about nothing. I don't think there's much to it. It's just Tuchel wasn't happy with how he played. What was your thoughts on it?
Yeah. Every time I hear anything about Hudson-Odoi, I always feel like he's getting an unfair crack of the whip. I feel like when he was brought off in that game, I feel like obviously it depends on your character, but that can't be a confidence builder for someone that isn't, you know, like for someone that has, you could say, a quite troubled Chelsea career. You know, in the past, he's been linked with Bayern Munich, he's been linked with exits out of the club multiple times. And for a young English player that you just want to see perform, to bring him on to then sub him off 30 minutes later, I feel it's never gonna help a player. personally. And I feel like there were other players he could have taken off in that game to make a difference. I feel like Werner, for example, hasn't really performed all season to be clear with this, it's in terms of the levels we were expecting from him. You know, he's done okay all season, but in that game at the weekend, Werner didn't perform. You know, he had you know, he could have scored multiple goals. I would have liked to see Werner go off as opposed to taking off a young English player that's, you know, it's going to dent his confidence. And ultimately, now one game later, Tuchel can look at his good performance in the Champions League and probably claim some sort of responsibility and like, oh yeah, that's his fight back. But if I'm Hudson-Odoi, I would struggle to see that as not disrespectful. And I would be the guy in the interview after saying, no, this is how I like to play football. This is like, do you know what I mean? I don't put it down to the manager, but it's difficult.
Yeah, I think with that whole thing though, I think Tuchel knows what buttons to push. I don't think he'd do it to a player that couldn't take it. And like if you're taking Werner off, like Werner's confidence is very, very fragile right now. It could really, really affect him if he did the same thing that he did Hudson-Odoi to Timo Werner. But with Hudson-Odoi, he probably, in the back of Tuchel's mind, he knew that he was going to start him in our most important game of the season. So all that hoo-ha about him taking them off, he knew that Hudson-Odoi's confidence is not going to be crushed because you are very important to my plans. So I think it's much to do about nothing. I think Hudson-Odoi's, if he carries on playing the way he's playing, we will see the player that we hope to see. Because he's becoming more well-rounded, and he's showing us things that he'd never shown us before in terms of tracking back, in terms of ability to tackle. He's actually a very good tackler, as well as the things that we all know Hudson-Odoi is good at in terms of taking on a man, cutting in. I'm happy with Hudson-Odoi, and I'm happy Tuchel as well.
Yeah, again, I just want to see young English players do well, and yeah, that's fine. I think I'd probably resonate with what you were saying there. So yeah, guys, thanks again for watching. Let's leave it to you guys. What do you think? Do you think you'd like to see, or who would you like to be the next Celtic manager? Do you want it to be Eddie Howe? Do you want it to be Steve Clarke? Or would you like it to be the assistant manager that's actually the favourite at the moment? You know, Callum Hudson-Odoi, what's your take on this? Olivier Giroud, is he the most underrated striker in the Premier League? Let us know in the comments below.
Nice one, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe this video. Like this video and subscribe to our channel, and also follow us on socials. We Talk Football Podcast on Instagram, WTF Podcast 90 on Twitter, We Talk Football Podcast on Facebook, and you'll be back with more videos.
We appreciate it, guys. We're trying to get to 50 subscribers, the big 50. Share it, like it. We appreciate you. See you later.
Sweet.